Fake cops slapped his wife in court, but they didn't know her husband was a Navy SEAL. Seconds later, their faces were broken, and an entire HOA scam began to collapse. They marched into court dressed like police officers. Cheap uniforms. Fake badges. But they carried themselves like kings of the room. People lowered their eyes, afraid to even breathe wrong. Then it happened. One of those fake cops slapped Jack Harper's wife, right there, in front of the judge. The room went silent. Jack didn't ask questions. He moved like lightning. One punch shattered a jaw. Another strike broke an arm. Within seconds, both so-called enforcers were writhing on the floor, faces broken, power gone. Jack ripped a badge off one of their chests. The cheap metal bent in his hand. He held it high and shouted, "This isn't law. This is fraud." The gallery erupted. Neighbors who had been silent for years finally screamed the truth. "He's right. They've been scamming us. They're not real cops." For the first time, fear turned into fire. Minutes later, real officers stormed the room. The fakes cried out for protection, begging for backup. But the bailiff shook his head and said the words everyone needed to hear. "Those badges are real. These men aren't cops." The room exploded in gasps. The imposters were handcuffed and dragged out, their empire crumbling. But Jack knew, soldiers don't build empires. Someone else was pulling the strings. And there he was, a wealthy man in a luxury suit, slipping quietly through the chaos. Jack stepped in front of him. The man smirked. "I am the HOA. I built this empire on fear and paperwork. You can't punch documents, soldier." Jack's voice was cold. "Maybe not. But I can burn your empire down." Back home, neighbors carried boxes of fines, threats, and forged letters to Jack's door. Together, they built a wall of evidence. The story hit the news. Headlines screamed, "Fake HOA scam exposed." The mastermind's power shattered under the weight of the truth. Days later, he was dragged out in handcuffs. His thugs abandoned him. His empire turned to dust. And as neighbors celebrated in the street, Jack stood tall beside his wife, the sunlight breaking through dark clouds. Because when you strike a Navy SEAL's family, you don't just start a fight. You start a war you can't win.